What did take off, however, and basically because AMD and many of the I should tell you, part of the reason why they thought Rambus was going to take off is because Intel was behind Rambus, right? And Intel at the time was the primary player in the processor market. Okay, and so they were all behind Rambus. Well, AMD and many other major system and memory makers threw all of their support behind a technology called double data rate, or DDR SDRAM. And you know what this always makes me think of when you talk about Rambus versus DDR? It's almost kind of like if you go back, you have the Sony Betamax versus the VHS or VCR videotape technology, and it was kind of that same thing where Betamax was really where the technology was at. I mean, that was the superior technology, but it was costly and there were delays and it was some proprietary issues and so on and so forth. And so VHS kind of took over as the standard. So DDR is kind of like the VHS. Okay, so that's why I like these kinds of things where you look at history and technology and you look at where you have competing technologies, and it's always interesting who wins and why, right? But in this case, I will tell you that DDR pretty much won out. This is the type of memory that you'll find pretty much everywhere now. Now, DDR actually has 3 flavors, and really it's not as much 3 flavors as much as 3 levels of advancement. Okay, so we have our regular initial DDR. It doubled the data rate. You had 2 instructions that were processed per clock cycle. Okay, and then we had DDR2, which I really need to kind of emphasize, it is not compatible with DDR. If you look at the picture on the screen, you can see that the notch, right? There's a little notch in the bottom of the stick. It is slightly moved over from where the notch is on DDR. And they did that so that you can't put a DDR chip into a motherboard that's designed for DDR2, and you can't put a DDR2 chip in a motherboard that's designed for DDR. Okay, matter of fact, as long as we're mentioning that, notice DDR3 is also not compatible in the sense that the chip gets moved there as well. And I'll tell you what, the bottom line here is you had DDR, which kind of doubled the original SDRAM. You have DDR2 through the use of special buffers, which I guess could be sort of like a cache, essentially doubled DDR. And if that wasn't fast enough, DDR3 could then, again, essentially double the throughput from DDR2. And I will tell you, by the way, some of the advantages, and really I shouldn't say advantages as much as advancements that were made with DDR2 and DDR3 is not just throughput we were getting, but also a reduction in power. Okay, so as far as power consumption, because again, especially with things going portable, and even beyond portability, even if we were talking about a desktop computer, right, we're trying to be green and trying to be efficient with our resources. DDR operates at approximately 2.5 volts, whereas DDR2 operated at 1.8 volts, and DDR3 goes all the way down to 1.5 volts. So we have much more efficient use of power.